Let me see. I think it shows that we're recording. Yeah, that we're recording now. Well, thanks, Diane, for joining. Diane, this is Diane Hansen. We're going to be presenting. She's Chief Inspiration Officer with What Works Coaching, creator of what's called Critical Opportunity, the Docs Theory. So I'm really excited to hear more about this. You've got various components of this. And as people join us, they can certainly enter questions on the chat. And also, we want to have an opportunity, if they go to peersondemand.biz, to join us and be able to really interact with us, and we can show them if they have a screen or a camera, we can show them also participate. So I wonder if perhaps, Diane, you've been a peer for Peers on Demand for a long time, and I've known of you and your progress, your path. You certainly contribute quite a bit. You're very articulate. And I was reading in your bio that you also are on stage as a presenter, obviously as a speaker, but I don't know if being on stage meant as an actor of some form.
Yeah.
I wonder if you might share a little bit about yourself, and then we can get into the presentation. Go ahead.
Well, you're absolutely right, Rocky. I love community theater. And actually, I think community theater has really helped me be the messenger for my theory, because, sometimes you really don't have a lot of warning before someone asks you, hey, what do you do? So that improv training really does help in situations like this, where I have a few days to prepare for a broadcast, or whether I'm in a networking situation. So I love my community theater history. I'm very excited now that I am out of my master's program to maybe have a skosh of time to get back on stage. But I'm Diane Hansen. I'm the Chief Inspiration Officer of What Works Coaching. And that's a company that helps individuals or organizations in crisis or transition identify the opportunity that they may be missing and take action to create results. And my theory, Doc's theory, determining opportunity from critical situations, also, I love to fondly call it this, and I've trademarked the word, the theory of Crappertunity, because let's face it, life's, little turdlets are everywhere. And so what you do is you go through these things in life and in business in particular. And today I'm going to be talking about the business applications of the theory. And I like how you call it critical opportunity, because that's exactly what it is. You're in this critical situation, you're in the moment, and there's an opportunity there to go deeper, or to learn something new, or to pivot or shift your business. And that would not have existed without the opportunity in the first place. Without that opportunity, you almost fail. So that's what it's all about.
That's quite a bit. And so tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you've been a business coach. You've got a lot of experience in what you're doing. You certainly have experience with businesses. I'm wondering if perhaps you could share a little bit about your background. What gives you the authority to speak about what you're going to speak?
So I cover this a little bit in my presentation, but I have 20 years of experience in marketing and communications at the corporate level. I've worked in the entertainment industry. I've worked in the healthcare industry. I've worked in publishing for news outlets. So I've done the corporate side of everything. I've become quite the expert in internal as well as external communication, communicating with stakeholders, as well as holding yourself as the stakeholder in your future that you are. So between that 20 years experience, a bachelor's in business administration from Cal State San Bernardino, and now a master's in communication management from the University of Southern California, I'm definitely posed and ready. And actually, this theory was founded while I was in my master's program at USC. So I started the program with one intention, and then I ended the program with quite another, in having my own research framework, my own teaching mechanisms for finding the opportunity in crisis.
Wow, very good. So should we get started with the presentation? Just let me know when I should forward the slide.
Absolutely. Roll forward. Okay, so first of all, if you're on this event, I wanted you to register officially for this event because you're going to get a few things. You're going to get access to your own private classroom space, which will include not only a replay of today, but a copy of my Guide to Crappertunity, which is a 72-page ebook that goes through all of the research, all of the methods, the case studies, and specific tools to execute Crappertunity in your business. Also, you'll get a overview of the theory terminology, the framework which I created, which is the upward and downward spirals, and a one-page strategic action plan. So you can put that to work immediately. So go to, and I made a short code for it, bit.ly/POD and register officially for this event so you can get all of that stuff. And that's whether you're watching this event live or you're watching it later, because we'll be placing this on YouTube and the like. So go ahead and move forward. So I want to start you off actually with a bit of a story. So a little bit more than a year ago, I was a member of Peers on Demand. I was working on my business, but I was doing so after quite a disruption in my life. See, 4 months into my master's program, I was laid off. And what became a certain future, what was a certain future became very uncertain future. Fortunately, I had been working What Works Coaching since my layoff before that from Konami in 2009. So I was ready and able to flip on that switch. But I still had a level of uncertainty, and that uncertainty was spinning. It's like, well, maybe I'll move back to Los Angeles, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll rejoin corporate America. Maybe I'll A, B, C, D, E. All of the possible permutations were spinning out. So what happened was I decided to take a road trip, because all great realizations are made on road trips. And this particular road trip, I decided to go down to Southern California for USC homecoming. And on that trip, I was listening to The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And if you've never read The Alchemist, please do. It's a beautiful story about following your dreams. So I was listening to The Alchemist, and it was a dark, dingy day. And I began to pass this SUV, and it was a really dark, dingy day, and what I didn't see was an 18-wheeler heading straight at me about 1,000 feet away. And it was the most frightening, terrifying, horrible thing ever, because I had made the decision to pass, and it was too late to back off. And I don't know if you've ever been there in your business where you've made a decision to advance, you've made a decision to scale or grow the company or whatever, but you can't go back. There is no going back. So then you have a decision, and you have this critical situation heading at your face, and you can either veer off and possibly injure yourself, others, or die. You can give up and let that critical situation hit you, and whatever may be, but probably quitting. Or you can accelerate. And at that moment, I decided I was going to put the pedal to the metal and get past. And I don't think that my vehicle has moved any faster in life. I think I got up to like 95, 100 miles an hour on that 2-lane road. And I just pushed the pedal to the metal, and I prayed I could get past. And the SUV is honking next to me, and the 18-wheeler is honking, heading at me and flashing his lights. And all I could think is if I need to take quick, sustained action now, because if I'm not taking quick, sustained action now, I'm dead. I'm dead in the water. So long story short, since I'm standing here, obviously I lived, but it gave me a new sense of life, a new renewal. And that renewal was simply, I was going to accelerate. I was not going to put my tail between my legs and go back to corporate America, where I knew I would be making 6 figures in a flash. I was going to be making 7 figures in my own business and having my own way. So that really was the impetus of a decision for me. And I think that we come to an impetus, all of us in business, where we have a critical situation flashing us in the face. Our revenue is low. Our customers aren't responding. Something is happening and we have to make that decision. And I was cursing that 18-wheeler. I was cursing him because, this is a lights on area and he didn't have his lights on. And I looked down and I wasn't shining my light either. So I want to ask you, in your business, where are you not shining your light? Where are you not taking these opportunities to take these critical situations and move forward? So go ahead and advance that slide, Rocky. Can you show the slide and move it forward just a little bit?
All right, let me do that.
Okay. Awesome. So it's not all 18-wheelers, but it is critical. What you're facing does matter. It matters monumentally. And whether you're just facing a problem, maybe there's a hitch in your supply line or something like that, or there is a full-on crisis. You have product tampering. You have, some major malfeasance. You have an Enron situation on your hands. It's not all an 18-wheeler, but whatever it is critical. So the core of Doc's theory is capitalizing on critical situations, and I feel it's important to define that. A critical situation is a crucial moment that's unexpected, which creates disruption and uncertainty. So you don't know what is next. If you didn't expect it, it's disruptive and it's uncertain. When I started to pass that SUV, I did not expect an 18-wheeler to be heading at my face. I did not expect that. And that was incredibly disruptive because I began to question absolutely everything that was going on in my life. And I was usually uncertain if my little SUV could pass this other SUV. I couldn't control what this SUV over here was doing, whether he was going to back off or whether he was going to, accelerate or what he was going to do. All I could control was me. So when I got back from that trip, I immediately called up my supervising professor at the University of Southern California, and I said, listen, I have an idea. And before that, Crappertunity was something that I had kind of bandied about, an idea, but I hadn't made it real. So actually, after that situation, after that critical moment, I decided that, no, it's time to research this. It's time to see if this thing is real. And that's exactly what I did. Go ahead and advance the slide, Rocky. One forward. Okay, so this is the beautiful University of Southern California. And if I have any Trojans watching, fight on. My theory was created as part of my USC master's thesis at the Annenberg School of Communication and Journalism, where I graduated with a 4.0. And I was overseen with doctoral supervision, several doctoral supervisors on this theory. It was created through a mix of primary data and secondary data. So I did academic studies, journal articles, books, published research. I looked at everything that existed on the topics of crisis communication, resilience. I looked at different research areas about major crises. And then I did my own research. So I did test cases with 20 organizational types. And I consider an individual an organizational type. An individual is actually really a complex singular organization. Because I wanted to see, is this a crisis theory? Like, is this something like product tampering or mass shooting or that type of theory? Or is this actually going to apply to just about any problem? And I'm happy to report that it applies across the board. I also did a study with 203 participants on the impact of media and the formation of movement. I studied the Harvey Weinstein case and how the Me Too movement formed out of the truth tellers, which have been named Time's Person of the Year, Time Magazine's Person of the Year. So I did a awareness study on not only how aware individuals who had been abused, both men and women, had been abused were aware of political situations in their community, but also their empathy levels and how they attached and became aware of not only themselves, of people around them. So that became one of the sub-studies that's part of the theory of crappertunity. Go ahead and move forward. So the core of Doc's theory is that, one, you have a critical moment that comes into play. And I want you to view this presentation through the eyes of your business. So I want you to ask yourself, what critical moments are you facing right now? What decisions do you have that must be made? Then I'm going to teach you how to move up the upward spiral to create opportunity. But before I do that, I have to make you aware of the toxic safety blankets that you've been holding on to that may be holding you back. And everybody has different things that spiral down into some sort of delay or some sort of failure. So I've identified 7 elements to the downward spiral. Additionally, then you really, really have to get a grip on what your personal unlock code is. So Crappertunity, or Doc's theory, teaches you how you specifically in your organization, your business as a leader, react and respond to critical situations. Once you have your unlock code, you can apply that to just about any critical situation you have. So go ahead and move forward, Rocky. So I want to tell you who this theory is for and who it's not before we get rolling. Because if it's not for you, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. If it is for you, it may possibly change your life and business. So the people who will find opportunity are the executives. Actually, I'm going to start telling you who will not find opportunity in this. If you have a fixed versus growth mindset, if you have your processes, they're fixed, they're the way they always have been, that's the way business has always been done, and you have no authority, no power, or no will to change any of it, it's not for you. If you say you've tried it all and you won't actually integrate anything into your operations, if you're just going to, kind of pay lip service to a new thing to say, okay, I looked at something, it's not for you. Because this is a theory of action. This is not just an academic theory that you absorb and go, okay, great, I got it. You really have to take action on this theory. It will not work if you don't do the work. And that's a major, major part of this theory. It's not something that you absorb by osmosis and all of a sudden you're changed in the way you deal with things. If you feel like you don't have any control, if you are a victim of the market, oh, well, the market's going to do what it's going to do. Oh, well, you can't control the press, stakeholders, stockholders. You can't control fill in the blank here. If you're constantly looking at what you can't control and you're not looking at what you can influence or can control, it's not for you. Also, if you're just absolutely in love with what's worked and you're just in love with your stories, you hold on to those stories because those were your glory days, and you hold on to that with all of your might and you use it as reference constantly. If you are living in the past, you are not ready to live in the present. So it's not for you. Who will find opportunity? The exact opposite of that. Leaders who embrace change, who are open to testing, trying, integrating new ideas, who believe there's an element of anything that they can control or influence. There's some little crumb that you can control or influence, that you can go within to look at your company, look at your company culture, look at your company's behavior patterns, look at your hiring practices. Be willing to research and look at everything. Because once you're able to research and look at everything, you can gain that control over it. Okay, go ahead, Rocky. So this is the Doc's theory framework, and we're not going to stay on this slide for long, but I want you to see how the framework is set up. It's an upward spiral and a downward spiral sparked off by a decision. Dr. William Glasser coined choice theory. Choice theory basically says, based on enlightened self-interest, we make choices every day about everything in our life. The world does not act on us, we act on the world. So that's why we have an upward spiral, which we can influence, and a downward spiral, which we can influence. So go ahead to the next slide, Rocky. All right. So Michael Beer, he created a formula which was published in Harvard Business Review. And I want to go over this formula with you. The PRCH is change. This is what you want to execute within your company. You want to move past or beyond status quo. The middle part, D times M times P. D is dissatisfaction. You're just kind of done with the way things are going. Either it's not producing enough revenue, there's something in it that is not sitting well with you. M is modeling or vision. So you have to have a vision for how, not only are you ticked off about how it is, you have to have a vision for how you want it to be. If you lack that vision, getting that change is hard. Also process, and that's exactly what Doc's theory does. Doc's theory gives you the exact process to take your dissatisfaction, turn it into vision, and actually decrease C, resistance. So that resistance is what's holding you back. That resistance is that downward spiral. So you can take that resistance and shrink it. And you can see what are your go-tos. What are your go-tos for when you're uncertain, when you're scared, when the market is out of control? Because the market does go out of control. Customers go out of control. PR goes out of control. The media goes out of control. So that resistance becomes your go-to. Go ahead to the next slide, Rocky. So you can see from this the link to Doc's theory. That upward spiral is all about D times M times P. And the downward spiral is all about reducing C, resistance. So you can see that clear link right there. Go ahead, next. So let's start with the downward spiral of failure, because we need to know where we're getting ourselves stuck before we can unstick ourselves. I think a lot of the times we're very excited and we go straight for the solution. That's a fantastic value to have, to say, I'm just going to get to work. I'm going to go to it. But what happens is that we have these go-to behaviors, these go-to things that we do. And the core of Doc's theory is not therapy. And I want to remove that thought from your head right now. This is not therapy. This is keeping your feet in the here and now and saying, okay, what am I doing? What is my company doing? What are my employees doing? What are my customers doing in the here and now? And this is the beauty of Doc's theory, is you can apply it to yourself. You can also apply it to any stakeholder in a critical situation. So go ahead and roll forward, Rocky. So the first element of the downward spiral of failure is denial, disavowal, and ego. And this is a deadly triad, and this is where a lot of us start. Something happens and we go, this is not happening. This is not happening right now, and I just don't want to deal with it. So we do the ostrich dance. We pick our heads up and we stick them in the sand and say, nope, that's okay. I'm going to focus over here. This department needs my attention right now. I'm not going to pay attention to over here. I'm going to look at the monkey. Look at the monkey. That's what I'm going to do, because that's going to help me deal with it. That's going to help me deal with it. And what we tell ourselves is we tell ourselves a big lie, that avoiding it is going to help us process it. And I can tell you, avoiding it does not help you process it. Avoiding it lets you focus on something else so you can deny it. The next thing we do is we'll say, well, I'll tell you why this is happening. I'll tell you why. It's because Johnson flubbed his sales numbers. I'll tell you why it's happening. It's because the market did this. I'll tell you why it's happening. It's because we messed up on our projections. I'll tell you why it's happening. So you get into this justification loop of I'll tell you why it's happening without actually looking at why it's happening. And that's really, really dangerous. Another really, really dangerous thing is to go into ego. Now, what I call, this is inflation or deflation. Either our CEO is a rock star, he would never make this mistake, or, man, I knew I was faking it in this job. I knew I was not qualified to step into this role, and here it is, proving me right. And what happens in that instance is that instead of facing the critical situation, we pick up the stick and we start beating ourselves and we deflate ourselves. And that makes the situation bigger than us. It makes it bigger and bigger and more uncertain and more scary. And according to my research, those executives who feel ill-equipped to deal with a critical situation, a crisis, they are more likely to fail. They're absolutely more likely to fail. The rock star CEO who thinks that, well, that's okay. I've been through this before. We're just going to ride this one out, folks. No, it's totally, let the PR department spin it. Let the PR department handle it. Those are the ones that fail. Those are the ones who fail big time. So go to the next slide, Rocky. Because that leads to the next element, which is numbing and dissociation. How many of you, drop something in the chat, have had a really tough day at the office and said, I just do not want to feel this is such a bad day. I'm going to go have a drink. I'm going to go play racquetball. I'm going to go fill in the blank here because I just can't. I can't deal with it. I can't deal with it. I'm done. I'm shutting down. I'm shutting down. That's what numbing and dissociation is. It's shutting down. It's let's avoid what's happening and it will go away. So more than denial, it is a deeper level of denial where you truly, truly believe you're not just putting it on the shelf for a little while. You're just not denying it for a little while. You are making this a permanent habit. You're going to avoid what's happening and it will go away. Profits are declining. Costs are rising. Nothing I can do. Let's just forget about it. Focus on something else. It'll go away. I don't want to feel what's happening. That's numbing and dissociation. And that's very dangerous because it leads to the next element of the downward spiral. So we're starting to spiral down. And Rocky, give me the next slide. Victimhood and blame. So now, whereas you started out picking up the stick and beating on yourself or puffing yourself up, now you're taking it out in the world. You're taking this out in the world. You're saying, I have no control over what caused this problem. It is someone else is totally responsible for it. Someone else is totally responsible for it. I'm the victim here. My company is the victim here. And I am the poor victim. I am the poor victim of this critical situation. Now, okay, let's bring it back to the 18-wheeler. If I would have gone into victimhood and blame while the 18-wheeler was coming at me first, while I was in front of the 18-wheeler, and I'm literally like 1,000 feet as I come around, if I would have been in victimhood and blame, that would have been my go-to. At that point, I would have said, look at that 18-wheeler. It doesn't have its lights on. This is the and I would have lost seconds. And I'm talking about, it was probably about 3 to 4 seconds that I had between getting over and that 18-wheeler flying past me. If I would have wasted, and this happens in business, we waste time pointing fingers. We need to stop wasting time pointing fingers, being the victim, carrying around our own body talk so that we can say, oh no, that's okay. This always happens to me. And oh, here it goes again. Oh, here come the problems again. I'm not saying that you're that kind of leader. I'm absolutely not. What I am saying is that victimization and its partner blame are dangerous. You start blaming your staff for their mess ups instead of coaching them to make them better. You start blaming family. Oh, well, I just got pulled away. My wife has this issue and I'm going to blame something in my personal life for what's happened at work. So you don't have to necessarily blame a person. You could start blaming character. You say, gosh, I knew that guy had no integrity. I knew he had no integrity. But that brings you into victimhood and blame, and that's the downward spiral. So go ahead, Rocky. Now that brings you into isolation or joining forces with hate. Leave me alone until I figure out this problem. I am closing my office door. I'm closing my office door. Leave me alone. I'll figure it out. Now, as you can see, a lot of these intermarry with each other. And the reason why they're elements of a downward spiral is you actually don't let go of the ego portion. If you're into inflation, you're going to be more likely to either join forces with hate in a way that you're the leader of the mob, or you're isolating and saying, I'll figure it out. If you're in that numbing part, you might numb and isolate. So you might go away and engage in another activity that's going to numb you out from the situation. Joining forces with hate is, I want to complain to you about my problem. Now, if you have an organization where you have multiple employees, you can spot this employee a mile away, because the first time there's something they don't agree with, they try to posse up. They try to grab the nearest people and posse up and try to get, this mob mentality going. Interesting thing about that mob, they don't actually do anything. They do nothing. All they do is complain and try to disrupt. And that's why it's a downward spiral of failure, because this is not an agent of change. We're not talking about social movement here. When I did my Me Too study, I noticed that the women who are angry, who are gathering people to get angry, they didn't show positive momentum in, I gathered women and we started a rally, or I gathered women in this. It was all victimization talk. All of the keywording in the quantitative research was all keyworded off of things that created the next element of crappertunity. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Rocky. Hopelessness and powerlessness. So as a group, or if isolated, the primary thought becomes, there's no hope. There's no hope in this situation. I have no power over it. There's no hope. It's bigger than me. It's all at the top of the corporate ladder. The big corporate, the CEOs, that's where it's coming from. And we have no power, but we might as well complain, because at least that makes us feel better. So it starts this hopelessness and powerlessness. And the core of that is, there's no hope for me to win. I cannot win in this situation. I have no power. I cannot win. There is no hope, which
Lisa?
to inaction. So that next slide is actually inaction. So there are two things that happen. Either there's no action that takes place, or the great idea comes up. The grand idea comes up to reach for the silver bullet. Somebody get the silver bullet and shoot that werewolf. I'm going to hire a new CEO. They're going to change everything. HP did this with Carly Fiorina. Carly Fiorina, the rock star CEO, was going to change everything for HP. What happens? A few years later, the rock star CEO and her big ego were laid off, canned by the board, because she did not move the needle with that. And what companies need to do at that point of reaching for that silver bullet is they actually need to reach for the silver bullet that is their core values. Their core values and why they started their business in the first place, what made them successful in the first place. That is what is going to make them successful yet again. But what happens in times of critical situations, in times of crisis, is they become so uncertain of how to deal with everything. And they don't deal with critical situations one situation at a time. They try to deal with the whole kit and caboodle. So when you go into inaction, and Rocky, we're on the next slide if you can get to it. When you go into inaction, I'm not going to do anything about this. Let's put this on the shelf for a while. This happens a lot when new entrepreneurs do business plans. They'll do this fantastic business plan. And then they'll go, all right, this is great. It's a little big, but it's great. And all right, well, I know this is what makes money, so I'm going to put my business plan on the shelf. And what happens is our business failure rate increases. Our business failure rate is higher than our divorce rate. And that's, I mean, both of them, huge failure rates. Because what we do when we're uncertain is, as we're spiraling down, our last step before quitting is we're either reaching for that silver bullet, we're reaching for that coach who can just solve everything for us. The thing is, let me tell you, I make my money off of coaching and consulting. I can't help. But if you think I can do all the work for you, you're wrong. You have to drop the silver bullet mentality and be your own silver bullet. You have to be your own silver bullet at that point. And that's why, go to the next slide, Rocky. The last part of that downward spiral is giving up. And I want to do everything within my power to wake you up so that you don't give up. Because once it's over, it's over. And part of my research was Jim Collins. Jim Collins did a 10-year study with one of his colleagues. And he studied companies that failed or were on the crisis or the brink of failure and then pulled themselves back up. And he identified 5 elements of failure. But the thing that Jim and I agree on is that the one you cannot come back from is giving up. Your company closes or you sell it. Your product line dies. You are let go or fired, or you have to let go or fire someone because something's got to fall. Something has got to fall at that point because you're so far down the spiral. There is no hope. You've reached for every last silver bullet. That silver bullet hasn't been yourself, and it's over. Okay, so now that I've painted the bleaker picture, let's show the hope, because there is hope. These are toxic safety blankets, every single one of them. And we grabbed onto these blankets because at one point, they worked. And they worked well. They worked super, super well. I was married for 16 years. And I can tell you that every single one of these during my marriage was just not the healthiest marriage. They worked really well. And what happens is when something works well for us, we start to use it across the board. So if I've actually figured out something in the past by isolating myself and then coming back with a big answer, I'm going to think that that's the way it works. And that's the way I operate. And that's how this business problem is going to get solved. So the hope is in becoming aware and becoming conscious of which of these, and you might reach for one, you might reach for multiple. It's not necessary actually to go and follow. This is why they're elements and not steps or stages. You don't have to go through every bit of that spiral. You can grab at certain blankets. You can grab at certain blankets. And those blankets worked for us, but then we start to pile them on. And as we pile them on, things become more and more uncontrollable, more and more hopeless. And it's very, very difficult to climb out from under those blankets and into the solution. And one thing that I saw in one of my case studies with business owners is they're reaching for good at the same time as they're holding on to with these blankets. And that equals stagnation. So if you wonder, I've been trying so much, but I'm not moving, I'm not getting any movement, it's because you're holding on to something down here, quite possibly, and that is limiting how much you can go up. So let's talk about the up. All right, Rocky, next slide. So, Crappertunity rewires old habits. So this is a rewiring process. So go to the next slide. Head right over, there we go. So what we want to do is we want to bring you both with your downward spiral safety blankets and your upward spiral possibility, your critical opportunity, is we want to bring you into awareness, consciousness, and humility with this. Now, if you notice, as we're climbing that critical opportunity spiral, you're seeing the opposite of that downward spiral. So awareness, consciousness, and humility. This is the reality of the situation. This is where we get to role play a little bit. I want you to take a hat, imaginary hat, and you're going to put it on your head, and you are going to become an objective researcher of your company. You're going to become an objective researcher of your company, of yourself, of your employees, of your stakeholders, of anything that's impacting this critical situation. But here's the deal. You're going to pick one to start with. When we start tackling, it's like football. It's like football. When you tackle someone, you tackle the one that has the ball. You don't go after the whole team. You run after the guy who has the ball and you tackle him and you stop the advance. What we're doing here is we're stopping the advance of the problem. When you stop the advance of the problem, you can look at it. You can measure what yard line it's at. This is awareness, consciousness, and humility. This is the reality of the situation. You cannot, I repeat, cannot be afraid. You cannot be afraid to look at this situation from all angles objectively. And you need to be mindful of all the elements, how you're talking to yourself, how you're talking to your team. You need to look at your self-communication. You need to start looking at these things with not an eye toward judgment. That's where humility comes from. We're not using this process to beat you up. In fact, I want you to repeat after me. I will not beat myself up during the Docs theory process. I will not. I will not, because the Docs theory process is about awareness. It's about coming into that awareness with the data of a situation. And if you're going to beat yourself up, or if you're going to pump yourself up, you're going to say, well, I've done this before, you see, and stop right there. You need to come to this place from non-judgment of yourself, non-judgment of others, non-judgment of the data. This is a data-driven process. So go to the next element. Next slide, Rocky. Okay, so the next element, as soon as Rocky advances that slide, is going to be where you get to deal with the emotions surrounding the situation. And this involves a little bit of emotional IQ. Now, Dr. Ian Metroff is a thought leader in crisis management. And what he says is there are 7 forms of IQ that help in running a business. One of these, guys, is emotional IQ. And that doesn't mean we sit around and we have a cry circle about it. What that means is that you have to mourn your fallen expectations. You walked into this situation having an expectation. I passed that SUV with the expectation that I was not going to be facing an 18-wheeler heading at my face. You have to mourn that fallen expectation so you can build a bridge and get over it. Because if you're stuck on your fallen expectation, if you're stuck on not meeting the projections, if you're stuck on realizing that you need to pivot in your business and you pivoted too late and now you're in trouble, you have to mourn that fallen expectation before you can move on. And it truly is a 5-stage grieving process. And you've heard of the 5-stage grieving process. You have to move. You have to get angry about it. You have to, bargain with it. You have to be in denial. You have to go through these things. So I'm not saying that the downward spiral is bad. There is no good, bad judgment here. What it is data. It's all data on how you operate, unlocking your personal code to dealing with critical situations. Also, you don't have to like the situation. Acceptance is not about saying, okay, I accept it, I love it now. Our product's been tampered with, and we just gotta love that happened. It's not about that, blank denial. I mean, I think that the PR department has many uses, but spin is a bad thing. Spin is a bad thing because you need to communicate authentically with your stakeholders during critical situations. You have to communicate authentically because in a critical situation, in any crisis, the public feels betrayed. There is a betrayal, there is a mistrust there, and you don't have to like that it happened, but you do need to accept it so you can move forward, so you can communicate authentically. So that moves you into the next element once you master that, which is taking personal responsibility, assessment, and path evaluation. I am not saying you have to apologize here. This is not about apologizing. What this is about is seeing what you can control and or influence in a situation. That's why I said executives who think that they market forces and this forces and that forces and we just do what we can in our environment, whatever we can. It's not for you because you can control. You can control yourself. You can build a company culture which has a standard. You can have policies. You can have procedures. You can have mechanisms for influence built into your organization that is within your control. So you need to be able to look at what you can control and begin to see the multiple courses of action. Now there is, again, no one silver bullet. You have to, when you're doing a research study, you're looking at multiple angles and you're open to what the research tells you. I was hoping to find X from this research study. Well, you can start a research study with a research question, but you don't start a research study with a research answer. And you let go of the fact that you think you may know the answer. And I ask all my clients, I say, be willing to unlearn what you think you know. And that's very important because multiple courses of action that you may not have thought of, they're gonna come up, they're gonna spring up. And that's why staying, again, this is elements. It's like my cell phone here, made out of many elements, many elements to create the cell phone. Many elements are going to make up how you deal with critical situations. You're going to look at those paths, and what you're going to do is you're going to score them based on your core values. And if you do not know your business's culture, your core values, that's where you start. If you don't know what makes up your culture, why people do business with you and no one else, what makes your product, your service, your brand unique, if you don't know that, start at square one and know that, because you're going to end up stuck in this element, a path evaluation, because you're not going to know what's necessarily important to you. It's important to know what's important to you and in what order are they important to you. If you're a company that is high on integrity, we're not going to lie to your stakeholders to buy time. So know that. Next element. This moves you into gathering support. No decisions. There are by the way, no self-made entrepreneurs. There really aren't. I kind of have to laugh when someone says, oh, I'm a self-made entrepreneur. No, you're not. You had support. You had mentorship. You had teachers. You had education. You have a team. You have people around you. Knowing and embracing that we need our support systems is really important, because these multiple paths, you're going to end up deciding on one of them. And that decision to move on one of them is going to come from your support system. Now, that could be support systems like the Peers on Demand Mastermind, where this broadcast is airing right now. That could be support groups like a trusted group of people that you work with, maybe a core team. Companies that succeed have crisis management teams. They have someone from communications. They have someone from HR. They have someone from fill-in department here. And they mastermind on how to deal with a crisis. You need that for your leadership practice. You need that ability to gather support. That support group's going to do a couple things for you. They're going to provide you with accountability. They're going to provide you with research, and they're going to keep you humble. And it's important to stay in a group that's going to encourage you, that's going to build you up, is going to bring you up, and is also going to say, whoa there, tiger. Whoa there, tiger. Let's look at this option a little more. What's the why behind that option? Oh, okay. Well, what's your motive behind that option? Someone who's going to challenge you. You do not want to surround yourself by a support group that's a bunch of yes men. Yes men are no good because they don't challenge you. They don't move you forward. They do not advance your ability to grow. So you have to be able to trust them, be honest with them, know that you're not there to impress your support network, and you'll be able to move forward. So go ahead in the next slide, Rocky. Now you're able to take strategic action. So now that you've tested your ideas with your support group, you have your plan, you can start mindfully implementing it one step at a time. One step measure, one step measure, one step measure. Assure all the actions you are taking are in line with your goals and objectives. That is very, very important to keep aligned during this process. I cannot stress enough how important your core values are. They're so important because they allow you to focus your objectives, which leads to your strategies, which leads to your tactics, which leads to your deadlines. It all connects. It all connects. So taking strategic action is about mindfully aligning with who you are, what you are, who you target, how much money you want to make, and your authentic core values. Lining that all up, connecting all of it, and assuring that they are in line before you take that step. So you take that step, and then it leads to the next element. Next slide, Rocky. Celebrating progress. Now, this is something that we forget as business owners because we are charging ahead. We are charging ahead every day. We are building momentum. We are doing what it takes. And we forget sometimes to stop and tell ourselves, wow, great job. And that's not ego. That is not puffing yourself up. That's not inflating yourself. What's inflating yourself is, well, I was totally responsible for this because I watched that video, and that video totally changed our business because of me. And I'm that great me. I'm fantastic. No, great job, team. Yeah, great job, everybody. I mean, we really turned things around. Let's go out and celebrate. Check off that milestone. Keep track of your milestones, and you can celebrate every time you hit one. And it feels so good to celebrate. It feels so amazing to celebrate. And actually, I'll be celebrating a milestone here shortly. And there's no shame in celebration. There's no ego in celebration. It's simply encouraging your momentum. Next slide. This all helps you move forward and engage in crisis learning. Now, crisis learning is knowing what toxic safety blankets you grab onto. These are my go-tos. You know how to objectively analyze any critical situation, so you can put on that researcher hat with confidence. You know how to handle emotional factors in critical situations. So you know how to handle when your stakeholders feel betrayed, when your stockholders are feeling like they're not getting their dividends paid out enough. You know how to handle those things. You have a support team in place and ready to go for research and accountability. You have that mastermind. You are not doing business alone. You are not a self-made leader. You are a people-made leader. You need to know that. Also, I've hacked my own code. This gives you the opportunity to hack your own code, to find your critical opportunity in anything. And that is the most exciting thing about this theory. It's anything. So yeah, apply it to business, but then turn around and go home and apply it with your wife. Turn around and apply it with kids' teachers. Turn around and apply it with an 18-wheeler heading at your face. I have to say that near-death experience was a rebirth for me, because it showed me that from the one-to-one grind that I was made to be a bigger messenger. So go to the next slide, Rocky. Hit on over to the next slide. So it's those critical moments. Pause with me for a bit, and we only have about 5 minutes left. But I want you to get quiet with yourself. And I want you to think about something you're facing. What's your 18-wheeler? I want to know, what is your 18-wheeler? I have a case study. One of my case studies was a CEO who stepped out of the day-to-day operations of his company. And he was ready to be that passive CEO. He was ready to be that passive owner. What he needed to do was define his core values and then endorse his company to let his customers know on a communication level that he is not what they stand for. His values are what they stand for. And that's what I learned from that case study, is that your values, your corporate values, your values as a leader is what you stand for. And it's going to impact how you handle these critical situations. Next slide, Rocky. So I want to leave you with a bit of an offer. So I want you to be able to experience this theory for yourself. And I have a special bit.ly tag here. If you follow this bit.ly URL, it will take you to the workbook. Normally, this would be a $97 set. It includes the 40-plus page workbook that allows you to become that researcher that you need to become to guide you through the spirals. But I'm also including a bonus at no charge, and that's the Guide to Crappertunity ebook. Now, this is about half book length, 25,000 words, and 72 pages of research, case studies, stories, techniques, the things that make this theory what it is. The two of them together will help you take control of you, take control of your situation, any critical situation, and turn it into opportunity. And right now I'm offering it for $7, which is crazy, stupid, cheap. You're practically stealing from me. I just want you to know. $7 to get that ebook and the workbook. I mean, it's insanely cheap. I don't know what I'm doing other than I just launched this theory, and I just want as many people as possible to know about it and love it and use it and transform their businesses and transform their careers and their lives by knowing that there is not a single problem out there that you can't pull opportunity from. And Crappertunity, it's everywhere. So that's what I got.
That's plenty. That's tremendous offer for everybody to participate and really get the whole aspect, this whole theory. And change is something that everybody, especially in business, they're looking for. And the value is tremendous for being able to get where they're at, getting unstuck and be able to approach their dream, their destiny, their delivery. Diane, I really appreciate and thank you for participating here and being able to showcase your business, the critical opportunity, the docs theory, the ability for us to take some thoughts, ideas, recommendations that you have from other masters and be able to take it forward. So I also want to recognize who you are, the value that you bring to me, to all of us, anybody listening here and will be listening later on, but certainly the world. I think when you're able to be a change agent like you are, to be able to take a situation and help them and be a pathfinder and help them grow forward, I think that's tremendous. We're blessed because of you. And I also do want to resonate the celebration. I do want to celebrate my knowing you and that the world knows you, and certainly the times that we're in now. So thank you again.
Thank you, Rocky. And Peers on Demand has blessed me as well. I love being part of your mastermind, and it's an amazing, amazing group. And everyone should have a mastermind as good as Peers on Demand.
Well, we invite you also to participate in Peers on Demand. This is our last session for the year 2017. In 2018, you can certainly participate at peersondemand.com. Afterwards, we'll showcase, hopefully, Diane again, and be able to showcase others that want to participate and freely share their wisdom, their knowledge, their thoughts, ideas, recommendations, and more importantly, make connections